Well, hey guys, welcome back to the channel. As you can see, we have an 82 250R in the shop, and this actually belongs to a friend of mine. This belongs to a channel on YouTube called All Back Tires, and they ride their three-wheelers and they ride them hard. If y'all are looking for some good riding videos, some good riding content on three-wheelers, y'all be sure and check him out. Again, name of his channel is All Back Tires, and I think you'd enjoy it. His name is Tyler Britt. He asked me to take a look at this. He says that he thinks that it needs a top end. The truth, I have not taken one of these first gens apart. It's going to be a learning curve for all of us. I know you can do an end frame on these. You can pull just the top end in the frame, and we're going to probably start there, but I don't know if that's where we're going to stop. Basically, what we've got here is an 82. You can pretty much tell the difference. The 81 has a solid brake rotor. This has got a drilled brake rotor on it. That and a few other odds and ends. There's really not a lot of difference in the first gen 250Rs. Anybody recognize that headlight? Yeah. Same as the 200X headlight. Now the housing's different, but the headlight and that surround, I believe, is the same. But we're going to jump right into things. I'm going to put it up on the lift, and we are going to figure out what the compression is first. On a bike like this, we're going to go through the basics. We're going to check for compression, we're going to check for spark, we're going to check for fuel, and see where that leads us. I'm pretty certain he's correct that it is low on compression, and if so, we need to pull it down before we order parts. In the event that someone's put an overbore piston in here, keep that in mind. If you know what you're working on and you can order the parts ahead, that's fine. But in situations like this bike's 40 years old. It could be on its second or third overbore. We don't know. We're gonna have to mic the cylinder on it if that's what it is, and see, can we punch it again? Is it necessary? All of those questions are gonna come up, and we're gonna try to answer them. So let's see what happens. Let's see what we can get into. Alright guys, so we got our 82 kind of tore apart a little bit, and just checking a few things out. It's got really good spark. The spark plug looks really clean. I don't know if it was recently changed or not. I don't have any history on this bike at all. So I'm kind of coming into really blind. So, I always try to preach to y'all, start with the basics. Do you have spark? Do you have compression? Follow that up with, do you have fuel? And do you have timing? I mean, it's those four things. Whether it's 2-stroke or 4-stroke, it doesn't matter. Download the manuals. I tell y'all every week, get the manual. They're free. There's no reason not to have it. Get the manual for your bike and save it on your computer or your phone, or print it out if you want to. It's up to you. You should be looking at 145 to 165 PSI on this test. The service limit, which means the minimum Honda recommends for this engine, is 127. So if we come up with honestly 140 or less, we're doing a top end, we're doing a piston. So let's find out. Let's see where we're at. So as you see, the carburetor's off. Normally the choke would be all the way open. The throttle, you would want to push it all the way. But with the carburetor off, that's all out of the way anyway. So it's getting all the possible air that it can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick it over about 5 really good kicks, and you should be able to watch the gauge here. I'll try to keep my arm out of the way, and we'll see where it registers. Okay, so there we go. That tells us everything that we really need to know. While I had the top off, I went ahead and took some pictures of the piston so I could go ahead and start ordering parts. This is on its second overbore, and so based on that, now I know what pistons and rings to order. Cylinder walls look good. They need a good hone, so we're going to hone them while we have it. Alright guys, so we're back on our 82 here, 250R. This is a first gen. It's got the cool red engine on it. I like that. Pretty neat. Couple things, we got all our parts in. We've got our head gaskets, top end kit here. This would cover all our gaskets for the top end. We've got our rings, our circlips. I went ahead and cleaned up the carburetor and cleaned it, make sure it was ready to go. The idle jet was completely plugged up in this, so certainly was the right thing to do on that. Got our wrist pin, our Wiseco piston. It's like jewelry. They even put it in these black bags. They're pretty cool. Now keep in mind, this is a second overbore on this machine. I think 3 overbores is all you can get out of these cylinders, and that's why I opted not to bore it again. You know, we've already had a really good look at the cylinder. There's no scoring. There's really, it's in really good shape. And so since you're on almost the last bore of this engine, if we can get another set of rings through it and get some years on it, you know, some ride hours at least, I think that's going to be the right call. Probably won't have to rebore it for a while. As long as there's no damage to the cylinder, then I say a re-ring is the way to go. I went ahead and did a piston just because I think it's money well spent. You've got a fresh piston with fresh rings. We're going to hone the cylinder. We're going to get a good cross hatching back on that cylinder. We picked up the Dingleberry. That's what I call them. I'm old school, and some of y'all are too. This is a size comparison. I put them out. So this is your 200cc, say 200X or 185S. Flex hone's what the manufacturer calls them. That's the name of their company. This is the 250R, which is what we're going to use today, 250cc's. This is a 350X. To get just some comparison of those 3 engines, if you've never really thought about it, that's how big the bores are roughly. Remember, these are a little oversized, so there's tension, but this is the correct bore for each one of those bikes. So, you know, buying tools is always an investment in you. I've probably done, you know, 3 or 4 engines with this one, the 200cc engine. I really, you know, I do a lot of those. I've got 2 250Rs planned to do, so that was worth the expense. And I have 1 350X to do, and you know, who knows, I may be doing another one in the future, but I couldn't use either of these to do the 350X, so I went ahead and had to get one for the 350X. But it's an investment in your toolbox. It's one of those things. If you're going to do this kind of work, you're going to need a certain amount of tools, and those last a really long time. I can't tell you how many hones you can do with one of those, but they'll last years as long as you take care of them. So we're going to get started. We're going to pull the whole top end down on this. I've already pulled it down once. You saw that earlier in the video. Found out it had no head gasket in it at all. So that was a little, you know, unnerving. Stopped there. I didn't go any further. I went ahead and I did an experiment. I filmed this over the course of 2 different weeks, so until I go and sit down and edit it, I don't know what's there. So I'll go ahead and explain this in case you see something now that you didn't see earlier that didn't get filmed. I've put it back together, and I just made a temporary cardboard Diet Coke is what I used. head gasket. And the reason I did that is I wanted to put it all back together and run a compression check like this, and it was still the same. It was 65 psi. So that lends me to believe that the rings is really what's worn the most here, and it wasn't the lack of that head gasket being there. It wasn't like it blew out, and that's kind of what I wanted to get a better understanding of. How it ran without a head gasket is a testament to how smooth those two surfaces were, how tight that head was pulled down on here. That's not uncommon. People have even done that in cars. Back in the day, they just put a heavy coat of spray paint on a block and slam a head down on it and run with no head gasket. It works, but it doesn't work for very long. Your racing applications generally, and when I mean racing, I mean just a bunch of good old boys out on a straight stretch of road racing. But in this application, I wanted to see what it would be like with something, a gasket in place. Would that increase or decrease the compression reading I got when I initially diagnosed this bike? I've tried two different gauges. They both came up the same. No real surprises here, which is a good thing. Reeds came out good, intake came off good, piston came out okay. Wrist pin was a little stuck, but it came out. I can't find any fault with any of this. Cylinder looks great, which is really our biggest concern at this point. We already got a new piston. You saw that when I was unveiled all the parts. I took a moment. I wanted to see what the ring gap was on the OE ring. We had 65 psi compression, but that doesn't mean everything relies on the ring. You've got head gaskets, you've got reeds, you've got other items that could create a leak. And so I wanted to see how bad it really was. And so I measured it, and you saw me put it in. I kind of set the depth with the old piston. I got the feeler gauge out, and the old piston was 30 thousandths ring gap on this one, which is a lot. New ring is 0.014, which is right in spec. 13 is the minimum, I believe. I looked it up a minute ago. 13 is the minimum. The piston is in good shape. You know, it's not scored up. It's not bad. It's got a few scratches on it, but I think I probably did more damage picking out that ring. You saw that upper ring had completely collapsed, and that now the secondary ring is loose on one side, but it's collapsed, or when I say collapsed, it's stuck. It's completely smooth. I have a feeling that really all we could have done, we probably could have put this piston back in it and put rings on it and a new gasket set and been on our way. But for the money, and you're here, it's not that expensive to go ahead and get a new piston. Had this piston had any issues or scratches on it that I couldn't see while it was still in the bore, it was still better money to go ahead and get it done and do it once and do it right and not have to buy the gasket set twice. Like I said, the cylinder looks good. We're going to clean all this up and start putting it back together. We're going to hone this cylinder. We went over that earlier. This is going to be our hone, our flex hone, and I think we're going to be in good shape. All right, I'm going to speak up because the AC is running and it's getting a little warm in here, so I had to turn it back on. There's some controversy about how you hone. How fast do you plunge? How fast do you turn the drill? How many times one way? How many times to the other? Do you insert from the top? Do you insert from the bottom? I'm going to do it the way I do it. You do it how you want to do it. Now here's a couple things of how I do it. A 2-stroke cylinder I will do from the top, because the bottom is jagged and it's going to, your bearings are going to hang up and it's going to be rough going in from the bottom. On a 4-stroke, I go in from the bottom because the cylinder's tapered. This cylinder's tapered as well, but getting the ball started and going in relatively square to the hone or to the cylinder, I start from the top, and that's how I do it. It can get a little messy. You can run WD-40 is a good lubricant. It's not very expensive. I've got some in a spray bottle here, and that's what we'll be using today. But to keep everything relatively clean here, because I'm working in the house and not in the shop, I'm going to kind of do my pre-soak here in this bucket. And you want to use a lot of lubricant. Now remember, this is not a hone. Okay, we are not boring this out. We are adding scratches to it. If you want to think about it in its simplest terms, all we're doing is we are scratching the surface. You would have to run this hone for a pretty long period of time to really make it the next size up. And of course, there's no way to keep that even or consistent. But just there's a lot of misunderstanding about the difference between boring a cylinder and basically honing a cylinder. This is a hone. This is not a bore. I'm going to start clockwise, and I'm just going to plunge a few strokes. I don't have a preset number. Just want to keep everything good and lubricated. Alright, I'm going to go the other way. Now the best thing I like to do is to stop and check, you know, in between. Are you done? Do you need a little bit more? I generally do this process twice. Twice to the right, twice to the left. Generally about 10 to 15 strokes. 2 strokes with all the ports, your little dingleberries, you're gonna feel it. It's gonna, you saw the drill kind of jump around a little bit. You don't have that in a 4-stroke because of course you don't have those ports. But it's not a bad idea here and check and see what you have. You really only want to do the minimum here. Remember, this is a sealing surface. You start gouging and messing around with things, you're going to mess something up. That looks really good, y'all. We're looking for that cross hatching, and we did really good for our first attempt, our first pass. It definitely, that probably looks better on the camera there. Definitely got some cross hatching coming in. Looks really good. See that cross hatch and see how well that lines up in there? Pretty cool, huh? Alright, so I'm going to do it one more time before I call it done, and then what we're going to do is I'm just going to clean this cylinder probably for the next 30 minutes or so to get it as clean as possible. I may even run it through the parts washer. I don't use water in my sonic tank. I actually use a degreaser, and that's why I don't turn it up really hot, because they'll off gas if you use the wrong kind. And if you've got some glazing, you may need to do yours a little bit more. This cylinder actually looks really good. You know that. And if you're not sure what the cross hatching really does, It actually, the scratches allow the oil to drain back into the bottom of the case. That's what its job is. As the ring comes down, it wipes those little scratches, and those little scratches actually hold oil. And that again, of course, is what lubricates the cylinder and the rings. That's why when you starve an engine for oil, that's why the rings is what locks up a lot of the times. We saw that in a 200E not long ago. Y'all check that out. Now that's what you want. Nice, even, hone, cross-hatching, all the way around. Really nice. That's going to seal up really good. And it's also going to allow that oil to return quickly back to the crankcase. Alright guys, let me take a moment and just kind of show you a few things. We've talked about this in other videos. It never hurts to go over it again. Your pistons are normally going to be marked with either a dimple, a T, an N, some kind of writing, something. These particular rings are marked with an N, and then it's the 150, which tells us that they're overbore, and they match our piston 7150. So that's exactly what that correlates to, in case you're wondering. Two strokes are different. A lot of people talk about staggering your rings around your piston and how important that is, and it's very important on a 4-stroke. But on a 2-stroke, that does not apply. If you look really close, just above my finger there, there's a little, they call it a pin, and I think that's what it is. I think they drive a little pin into the piston. There's one there for the secondary ring. There's one here for the top ring. Now what we're to do is we're going to set our rings just like my fingers, where that retainer is between and splits the ring. And if you look very, very close, the ring itself, if I can get it to focus there, the ring is not a flat 90 degrees here. You see it has that half moon cut into it, half moon cut into it. Imagine when that pin comes in, it completes that circle. And here's why it does that. In a 2-stroke, you have ports on the inside of your cylinder. See the ports that go all the way around? So your cylinder is not smooth like a 4-stroke. You can imagine if those rings walked around a corner of one of those rings, catch one of those ports, and it's over. I mean, we're talking about scoring the cylinder and eating the ring and chewing up the piston and putting metal everywhere. I mean, it's just a real bad deal. So when you set your rings up on a 2-stroke specifically, look for these little pins in the piston, and that's what you set your rings up on. We're going to tighten these head bolts to 18 foot-pounds, and that is in a star pattern. There are 6 of them. The camera quit recording. So we got our head gasket put in. You saw that. That's actually what one looks like. Apparently this is the first one this bike has seen in a while. Anyways, base gasket too. Did y'all notice that? This machine did not have a base gasket. Whoever rebuilt this just, I don't know. I don't know. I hope at this point that the bore and the cylinder was right, because we based our build off of the piston that was in it. Now, the owner of this trike says he's been riding it hard. So it's been running with that piston in it, and that cylinder looks great. So I really don't have any reason to suspect that, but it does trouble me that somebody took the time to have the cylinder bored and then cheaped out and then put gaskets in it. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. So what I am going to tell you is we're going to do a compression test on it. And so I went ahead and got the gauge set up while the camera was off. And y'all can check this out. I'm going to lower the trike down here on the rack. And y'all can watch that little gauge right there, and let's see what we got. Now, of course, the rings have not seated. I'm not expecting for, you know, huge gains here, but we should see well over 120. 150, 160, somewhere in there. All right, very good. I'm happy with that. I think you will be too. That's 150, and at that angle, that is hard on my foot. So that's 150. Remember, we started with 60. Now we're at 150. So we more than doubled the compression on this engine. And it's only going to get better from here. When those rings seat, it's going to increase a little bit more. That's good. No noises, no odd, you know, clanks or bangs or anything like that. And we'll go ahead and assemble the carb, put it on, and exhaust. And I think we may be able to make some noise tonight. All right, that's how you spend a Friday evening right there now. About 4 hours total. You know, 2 hours, take it down, look it over, see what it needs, order some parts. Took about a week for the parts to come in, you know, about 10 days or so, and then another 2 hours putting it back together. Now, this bike needs a lot of work, but that was the first step. That was the first step. Let's get it up and running and get it dependable, and we can work on the pretty. Pretty is always easy to find, but this mechanically should put this trike bike in order. You see there's already a new chain and sprockets on it. So, you know, the owner's working on it as he can, and he's enjoying it every step of the way. And that really is the most important part. It really is no matter what stage or level your trike is in, or your project, your go-kart, your four-wheeler, motorcycle, whatever, it doesn't matter. As long as you're enjoying it, it doesn't matter if it looks like that, more finished or less finished, or somewhere in between, like the 250R. Again, the 250R is dependable. I rode it yesterday. It's a blast, but it needs a lot of work to be pretty. And so pretty comes. It just takes time.
I didn't have to change shirts. It got so hot this morning. It's we face the east, so the sun comes up and just blasts the side of the house, and it is hot under here. I got the fan running. I'm sure you can hear it in the background. This is a win. My goodness, we came in with a trike that hadn't run in a while, and it's got some questionable issues, but we're going to fix it. We're going to go through, we're going to get a carburetor. You know who we're going to get that from? Curtie's going to send us a carb. I really hope that we could have saved that one, but it's just, I think that choke circuit is sucking air, and that's why the idle's sporadic, and I can't dial it in. It's just not responsive to the fast idle screw. Other than that, I think the mix is off a little bit because of that reason too. I think it's sucking air. So we're going to get that straightened out. A few other things here and there before we get it back to the owner. But wow, that's exciting. That's always fun, is to come in with something you've never done before. And I'm no different than y'all. Y'all can do it too. Download the manual, take your time, look at the resources online, threewheelerworld.com, Facebook, maybe some good videos on YouTube. You could always try that. I hear there's some decent ones out there. How-tos and tips and tricks that you'll pick up along the way. It's the information's out there. You just gotta want to do it. And if you want to do it, then you can certainly do it. But I'm excited about it, so I'm ready for the next phase. We get another carb on here, I think we're going to be set. So as always, thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Tell your friends. Y'all have a good day. Bye. Come on, girl. Let's get some lunch.